We're about to start in a few minutes' time. A lot of new faces here, so let me just start with an introduction of myself. I'm Jo Yan. I head the Corporate and Commercial Practice Group at MahWengKwai. We're a law firm. We organize these talks on a monthly basis with the intention of sharing knowledge and experience with the audience. And one of the things that we've been trying to do more recently is to get other speakers to come and share their own experience on a topic of interest. Today's, I think, going to be quite an interesting and exciting topic. But before we get into the actual subject matter, I'd like to invite Jason Lee of Next Bank KL to just say a few words about what he does. Jason represents our community partners in this area. They're on the fintech side. We do a bit of fintech work. So without further ado, Jason, over to you.
Just to let everyone know, I'm the chapter lead for Next Bank KL, and these are my co-founders, Yan Ming and Wilson. And what we do is we are a financial technology community focused on the transformation of the financial services industry through entrepreneurship, innovation, and design. So we are really here to see the change and the disruption in finance. You see online banking, mobile banking, a lot of changes are happening. And in Malaysia as well, a lot are happening in the payment space. You had seen giants like iPay88, MOL, GHL doing their ePay. A lot of companies like this have been the late dinosaurs, but now there are a lot of startups coming fast, and some of them are interested in Series A as well. So part of being a community partner is we've invited them to be part of this event with MahWengKwai Associates. So
now to the main topic. I'd like to introduce Burnett, who's joined us all the way from Singapore. Burnett is the Associate Director of Farallon Law Corporation. He does corporate commercial work focusing on mergers and acquisitions, intellectual property, the whole works. Very capable guy. He started off as a lawyer with Wong Partnership, and then he went in-house to L Capital, which is the private equity arm of LVMH, Louis Vuitton. And now he's an Associate Director who focuses on mergers and acquisitions. So we thought we'd try and collaborate and share our experiences with you on Series A. Series A in Malaysia, I think we're getting there. So I think there are a lot of lessons that can be learned from both sides of the bridge. So without further ado, shall we? Is there anything on your introduction?
No. Thanks, first of all, for everyone coming down. I'm also new to the Malaysian startup scene. We look over enviously quite a bit because I think there's been a lot of hype, a lot of PR for the Singapore startup scene. But the fact is we haven't actually that many IPO tech companies or Series A the way Malaysia has had. So I'm really looking forward to actually learning from you guys as well. So yeah, let's get into it.
Let's start. Okay, so we've got an agenda here. They're all in your notes, so I won't go through them. So let's just get back to basics. What is a term sheet? Okay. So essentially, term sheets is the starting point for discussion of your first round of investment. Maybe I should take a step back. We're talking about term sheet for Series A. What is a Series A investment? There's no proper definition for it. I think it varies from market to market. A Series A fundraising in Malaysia may be very different from Series A in Singapore. You can differentiate it by the amount that's being raised. I think in Singapore, what would be a comfortable number for Series A?
There's really no figure. I think sometimes it's almost like a PR thing. I've seen so-called Series A rounds of 500,000, and they want to call it Series A.
Sing dollars?
Sing dollars. I've seen Series A of 7 million Sing dollars. It's about 21.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a Series A. So it's really the first time there's institutional money because most startups start with the triple F, right? Friends, family, and fools. That sometimes are very smart. And then this is the first time that a professional money manager, professional investor comes in, and I think we also look at the type of terms. Apart from the value, we also look at their preference rights. Increasingly, I think that's the way it is. When I started about 7 or 8 years ago, I think there were still large VC deals done with ordinary shares. When we didn't really have such a US influence, but I think these days that's quite rare.
Yeah.
It's always at least convertible preference shares.
Yeah. So just to summarize a bit, Series A investments can come in many forms. There's no strict rule to it, but there is a common form that we've seen, which is through your preference shares. Okay, but there are Series A that are also raised through the issuance of ordinary shares or through the incurrence of debt, the issuance of debt. But we're finding that that's not very popular these days. What's popular is convertible preference shares.
Yep.
Okay, so what is a term sheet? A term sheet is the outline of the terms of the transaction, the terms of your first round of major investment. It's typically in a box, a heading, and then with some description on the right-hand side. So it's meant to be a very punchy, summarized version of the transaction as a whole. This is not meant to be a legally binding document. I think that's the same in Singapore. There may be certain provisions that are legally binding, but as a whole, it's not legally binding. It's just there to say this is the direction we're taking. Once we've signed it, we will proceed on that good faith direction that we've talked about.
So some of the binding provisions in there would be things like confidentiality.
Yeah.
That's quite common. There's also a lockup.
A lockup and exclusivity, yeah?
Yeah, depending, could be 30 days.
Yeah. Could be months, I think.
Yeah. So that's something to look out for.
So maybe I just elaborate a bit about the lockup or the exclusivity. Now, as a startup, you're very pressed for funds, right? You need your funds so that you can grow quick. But investors being investors, they have very different risk appetite. And they may say, I'm going to pump money into you provided I am extremely comfortable with your company. How do I get the first level of comfort? I have to do what they say, a due diligence. So that may take weeks, or it could take months. Ideally not months, because that's going to take a while. So during this period, the company, the investor will say, during this lockup period, I'm going to do my homework on you. You don't go shop around. You don't go and don't go and talk with other investors, because that's going to waste my time, right? Perhaps founders, the targets are a bit kiasu lah. They want to get the best deal out there, so I'll go shop around, find the best valuation for myself. But that's why, from an investor perspective, they will insist on a lockup. So if they ask for that, I don't think it's unreasonable, but just try and negotiate on the actual time.
Period, yeah. But it also depends on how should I say, lack of a better word, sexy, how many people you think will be keen on your startup. Sometimes it may not make sense for you to be locked up, because when I act for the company, you do want to play investors against each other sometimes, because sometimes you're a really good company and there's a lot of interest. It's almost like dating. Why do you want to, in the initial period, you want to meet more VCs? So, if you're on the company side, I would say if the VC is really worth it, they're very serious, you've been talking for a while now, you know someone on that side, and you're happy to not be able to speak to someone for 30 days, because that's a very powerful tool that, hey, there are a lot of people interested in me.
Yeah.
If you don't act fast, people might come in and are close around.
Yeah. One thing that, as startups, you also need to be concerned about, apart from the financial investment that they provide, you also need to be aware of what are the non-financial value that they bring to the table. What experience do they have? What networks can they loop you into? This may go beyond the due diligence exercise. This is something that they internally need to sort out, whether they can commit that type of non-financial value add to you. So that could go into that discussion range lah,
So like Joanne mentioned, I think it's fair for investors to ask for it, because investors will spend time when they give you a term sheet. I think some of you may have sent out many term sheets and they don't always come back, but when they do, there's some show of interest. They will commit some time and money to do due diligence.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. I mean, they don't want you to go behind and play them off against each other.
It's the investors who prepare term sheets generally. I think it's the same in Singapore. Okay. So what other agreements do you sign simultaneously with the term sheet? So Burnett mentioned the confidentiality provision. You've got the exclusivity or the lock-in agreement. Apart from that, there's nothing much on that front.
I think one question I often get is, VCs don't want to sign NDAs. How? What do I do? And I can understand that because when I act for VCs, they see a lot of term sheets. And a lot of times, we're sorry to break it to you, but you're not the first startup in this field. And you don't have to track so many NDAs. So the way to get around it is, a lot of times you can tell people what the technology is. It's a med tech, it's a biotech. You can solve this, you can solve that. But I'm not telling you how. I'm not giving you the secret sauce. So, and if you find with growth, later stage companies, there is a serious risk because there are numbers that are being issued. There's real technology that you haven't filed a patent for and you want to keep confidential. But for early stage startups, it's not fatal if you don't have NDA. It's how you disclose what's so special about you.
And sometimes some investors, not all of them, but some investors are already thinking about their exit even before they invest in you. So they're thinking, okay, if I'm going to exit, who am I going to sell my shares to? So they're lining up. So they may engage in very preliminary discussions with potential investors. So that may be a reason why they may not want to sign the NDA. If you're concerned about your technology that you have, the IP or whatnot, well, you can get other protection through formal means, through registration of your intellectual property or whatnot. So there is some level of protection, not in all instances, but there is some level of protection. Okay. What agreements do I sign after entering into the term sheet? So this is the scenario where the investors have done their due diligence. They say, we're good to go, I'm going to pump in the money. So there are a few agreements that they would want. Starting one would be a share subscription agreement. That's to assist them in obtaining shares from the company. Second agreement would be a shareholders agreement. In Malaysia, you would also have documents to amend the articles of association so that you can create your preference share rights. Now, in Malaysia, very important to note that your preference shares can only exist if they are contained in your articles of association. It's not enough if it is contained in your shareholders agreement or your share subscription agreement. So if you have all that in the agreement but not in your articles of association, your preference shares don't exist.
It's exactly the same in Singapore. Sure.
Yes, you can always amend it. You need 75% shareholder vote to amend it. So you can amend it if you have your 75%. Yeah. But typically for preference shares, it will be an extensive amendment to your articles of association.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah. Another document that might pop up could be a put option agreement. Okay, so let me just talk about the earlier agreements, right? The share subscription agreement, the shareholders agreement. These are agreements that protect the investor against the company. So if anything goes wrong, who will they sue? The company. But startups being startups, there could be successful ones with funds. So if you sue, you want money. If the startup is successful, if you sue their funds, great. But if the startup has no funds, no money, even if there's a breach, you successfully sue it in a court of law, they have no money to pay the investor. Then who do they go after? They will go after the founders directly, individually. So that's why they may have a direct agreement with the founders. So now founders have their individual names at stake. I would argue that founders shouldn't be committed to such individual arrangements, but there are cases that founders do commit to these individual arrangements.
In fact, I think it's quite common for the VCs to require the founders to be a party, because there's some things they quite often ask for example, restrictive covenants. They don't want the founder to quit halfway and then join a competitor and take along staff. So normally increasingly there is a restrictive covenant for 2 years, where the founder cannot solicit customers, employees. So quite common for founders to be made a party to the definitive agreements.
Yeah. And to build on that point, just because you commit to the non-compete, try not to commit to other things like performance-based requirements. I guarantee that you will make a profit in X years. I mean, don't commit to things like that. That's really bad.
When I first started out, I came across a horror story. I don't think it will happen again. There was an agreement that I came across. I was acting for the founders. The VC ask for personal guarantees from the founders to guarantee the obligations of the company. It's very rare, but I've heard this done before. That's a complete no-no, right? Because you're investing in an early stage company, you take the risk. You don't ask the founders to put their personal assets on the line. Okay, so that's it might happen. Just something to take note of.
Yeah. Shall we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.